Thank you, Danny and Liz. Andy, let's look at Acts chapter 20. Take verse 7 to the top of the page. We're going to look at sleeping in church tonight, so get comfortable. Get comfortable. In reading Jason's letter this morning, I want to interpret that phrase for you. It came at the right time. That means he spent it just as soon as he got it. As soon as it hit he was thank the Lord, praise Jesus all the way to the bank, because there was already a need. Don't ever feel like if you're able to share money with a ministry that it's going to pile up somewhere.
Actually, that arrived on a Thursday. That Friday and Saturday night got canceled on, so it worked out today.
Yeah, that's new grocery money. All right. Well, I hope this DVD does well for him too. We promoted it on some of our Facebook pages and on the church Facebook page and getting it out. I believe we said something about it in the last one call, but get that thing. I thought seriously maybe about us all sharing our funny sleeping in church stories, but I'm afraid we'd be here till midnight. Everybody's got one. Sleeping in church. Now let's read this story, and it's an amazing story. It's an amazing story, but in my process of preaching through His Way, My Way, I said, well, I think I'll cover that in a different way, so let's do that right now. Chapter 20, verse 7. Upon the first day of the week, I'm going to kind of hit a few things and then stop. I don't believe the church ever got together and voted to start meeting on Sunday. I just think that it came quite naturally. And it's another one of those things that we find and we believe. Now, let me say this. We just finished looking at Lee Strobel's Christian testimony. Now, you may have lived your whole life, or may live your whole life, without ever rubbing elbows with someone who's an atheist or someone who's just adamantly against any kind of faith or anti-believer. Here in the South, we still live in a culture where people are still almost amazingly tolerant, and if they have great doubts in God and Jesus, they're not very belligerent about it. They know that their mama was a Christian probably, and they grew up around good Christian people, and churches have been in their communities. So they still remember and have respect. Many do, not all.
Well, Brother John, I kind of got the feeling from watching this that Lee Strobel was fine with Christianity until it entered his family.
Yeah, and there's just some people that you're not going to reach unless you're just like Leslie and that little girl, the one that actually he said that really is what touched his heart. And that's why I wanted to call the last session "A Matter of the Heart." You're right, and it's really, really hard. Sometimes when I was youth director, young people would come up to me, and a lot of times it was a young girl, because they wanted to. Their boyfriend was not a Christian, but they felt like if they would date him, that they would get him to accept Christ or receive Christ. They would say accept Christ or become a Christian. And I didn't want to discourage them, but I said, that's just really an uphill battle. It's very rare. But in Lee Strobel's situation, I believe I don't believe the facts ever really convinced him. I think that he really began to believe the facts after he became a Christian. He had all the facts. Do you remember what the criminal in the hospital bed told him? He said, you didn't want to believe. You didn't want to believe. Paul didn't want to believe in Jesus. He didn't want to believe the facts. And so he had all the documentation and all the information. But it truly was. Henry, you're right. It really was a personal touch. And I don't believe that we could truly look at Lee Strobel's story and say, he put out all the facts on paper, and then it just knocked him out. It persuaded him. Well, it really didn't. I believe it began to make sense to him after he became a believer in his heart. But there are many people in the world today, many people whom you and I may never meet. We may never live next door to them. We may never have a lunch or a meal with them or spend time with them. They may never come over to our house. We may never converse with them. They may not be members of our family. If they are, they don't. We've never had a conversation with an abject unbeliever. But it means, and so you and I, we don't deal with the kind of doubts that they have to overcome, or they at least have to address in their initial steps toward the cross. And here's one of those evidences, is that unbelievers, or even professing believers, many of my professors in college, I went to a Southern Baptist college when I was a young man. And many of my professors did not believe in the Bible as the Word of God. They didn't believe in the resurrection. They didn't believe in the virgin birth of Jesus. They believed he was just a great man, an important man. I was shocked one Wednesday night. I went with one of my new college friends to his church on Wednesday night, and I found out that one of my professors at school in New Testament theology was their interim pastor. And I said, "What?" I said, "Do they know what he believes?" And then I sort of rephrased my question. I asked Russ, I said, "Do they know what he doesn't believe?" They said they don't have a clue. They just know he's a preacher and he teaches down at this college. And so they were really impressed that he would come be their interim pastor. My Lord. My Lord. There is evidence very, very early. That they would say that the story about the resurrection was something that somebody made up hundreds of years after Jesus had died, in order to spice it up. Here's the story, here's Jesus' teachings. Well, let's say that he did miracles, okay? All right, let's say that they killed him, but he raised from the dead. And so they believe that that was made up, added to the Jesus story, hundreds of years after he died. And they didn't believe that Jesus rose from the grave. They just thought that if you added that to the story, that would spice it up and we could get more people to become Christians that way. Well, that's what they believe. But here, the book of Acts was written in the first century. And look, they're already having church on Sunday. Why would they have church on Sunday? They were all Jews, almost all of them. Why would they have church on Sunday?
Well, it's simple. Jesus rose from the grave on Sunday.
That was the resurrection. That was the resurrection. The resurrection wasn't invented or made up or thought up way, way on down the line. They started having church immediately on Sunday. Now they were still, as you see, Paul in the book of Acts, they were still going to the synagogue. They were still going to the synagogue. But guess what was happening? Because of Paul, Paul was the apostle to who?
The Gentiles.
That's right, to the Gentiles. So Gentiles, and they'd say, they were part of the church. "Hey, where are y'all going?" "We're going to the synagogue." "You want to go?" They said, "Why?" "They don't want me down to synagogue. I'm a Gentile." "Well, I'm sorry, I forgot." "Well, we can perform a surgery on you." "Oh, no, I'm not going to synagogue. I am not going to synagogue. Let's just go to church tomorrow and praise Jesus." "Okay, have it your way." So after a while, though, they quit going to synagogues because they were made to feel so unwelcome. "We really don't want you Christians. Y'all are really not our kind of Jew anymore." Well, here it says on the first day of the week, they're having church. And it's very, very early. Man, it's only a few years after, and from indication of the way Luke tells the story, they started getting together and celebrating the resurrection of Jesus every Sunday. That's how they did it, and that's why they did it. When the disciples came together to break bread. Now this is a big debatable thing, because generally when the Bible talks about them breaking bread, it just means they got together to have a meal. But this has taken on this phrase, breaking bread, to get together to break bread. It means something, it began to mean something entirely different after the resurrection. What were they doing? They were having the Lord's Supper.
Yeah.
Jesus had said, whenever you do this in remembrance of me. And so they were breaking bread. That's what they do. They no longer thought of breaking bread as let's together and have a meal. Now they did sometimes associate with a meal. And later on that kind of got out of hand, and Paul had to put a stop to it. He says, okay, don't get together. When you have the Lord's Supper, don't have food. Just have the Lord's Supper, and that's all. Because the Corinthians went nuts with it.
They made a party out of it.
Yeah, they did. Made a party out of it. Sound like a bunch of Baptists. Paul preached unto them, ready to depart on the morrow. Now his bags are packed, and he got to go to work tomorrow. And he's ready to go. He's already got his plans and everything, so all he's got to do is preach. And he continued his speech until midnight. Now it doesn't say when they started, but people, they probably wouldn't. You think that, so let's all get together, it's 9:30 or 10 o'clock. You think, let's get together. When do you think that they got together? Like we do, maybe at 5 or 6 o'clock? That's kind of what I think. I have no idea. It said he preached until midnight. I'm thinking if they started their church service at 11 o'clock, he still preached too long, didn't he? But they didn't start at 11 o'clock at night. Hey, let's have, it's 11 o'clock, let's get together and have church. Paul preached to us. I'll tell you something about preachers. Now, I don't know if you want to hear anything about preachers or not, but I do. I'll tell you something about preachers. Now, if there was 2 or 3 preachers right here, they denied every bit of it. They said, oh, that's just not true. But they'd be lying, because I'm going to tell you. We think the most important preachers, I want to say pretty much all of us. And I'm not just telling you because I'm guessing, because I have a lot of friends, and I've been preaching for about nearly 50 years, and I've known a lot of preachers over a lot of years. We think preaching is the most important thing in the kingdom of God. We just think the world comes and goes in preaching. And we love preaching. And we think it's the most important thing, that we think that God thinks it's the most important thing. You know what, in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, you know what Paul called preaching, how he described it?
The foolishness.
Foolishness of preaching. So I guess, well, you know, we're wrong. Preaching is not the, if we're honest, I've used it so many times. I guess once I heard it, I thought I'd never forget it, and I guess I used it too much. A sermon is something that someone would go around the world to deliver, and somebody else wouldn't walk across the street to hear. When we prepare a sermon, we hold that thing in our hands or in our heart or in our mind. We says, this is going to change the world. This is going to make a difference. This is going to shake the church. We think of that about every one of our sermons. I'm going to tell you, when we look at this service right here, we're having church. When a preacher comes in, especially a revival preacher or a guest preacher, and you sit him down in the front row, do you know what he's thinking while you sit him down there at 11 o'clock on 11 o'clock service, and he's going to preach for you? Do you know what he's thinking? I wish they'd get this music over with and all this rigmarole and all this praying and this offering taking and let me preach. That's the way we feel. Now, to some extent, that is our urgency and our sense of calling, and we're just eat up with it. It's not realistic. It's not the way God sees things. It's not reality. But I do want you to see right here in this church service, you're not going to find any pastors. Well, the pastor got up. Before Brother Paul comes to preach to us, I have a few announcements to make. Well, they didn't have no announcements. We're going to open with a word of prayer. Well, it doesn't mention prayer at all here. They didn't open with prayer, and they didn't close with prayer. It just said, here's Paul, and Paul started preaching. Now, it doesn't say that they had any musical instrumentation or any music. It didn't say they had any deacons. It didn't say they received an offering. You think, well, how could this possibly be a real live church service? Now, let me tell you something. Every one of you and most other Christians would assume that just because it didn't say any of those things, they probably still had all of that. They had an offering. They had lamb service or children's church. They probably had all of that and just didn't mention it. But we preachers, we see it, and we see that the only thing that the Holy Spirit led Luke to record was that somebody got up and preached till midnight. And it just goes further to confirm that it's really all about the preacher. I remember there's a very well-known evangelist. You would know him if I mentioned his name. I had him in a revival one time. And it was a church that they really loved a lot of singing. They really loved a lot of singing and did a lot of singing. And I remember sitting down on the front row. It was going to be my job to get up and introduce him. He didn't need any introduction. Everybody in the whole world knew who he was. And he leaned over to me and he says, when in the world are they going to finish all this singing and let me get up and preach the Word of God? I said, only 2 or 3 more songs. He said, oh, man. The first thing he said when he got up, he said, well, that is some great singing. Well, that's some great, yeah, sure was. That is done. Now, that's us. That's not true. That's not genuine. That's not the way things are. But I want you to know that don't ever let preachers say, well, preacher, let's do things your way. Because we might sing Stairway to Heaven or In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida as soon as we started out, and then let me preach. But that's pretty much all there would be. Whatever time they started, if Paul's preaching till midnight, I'm pretty sure Paul feels or felt like I feel. It's really important. When the fact of the matter is that I've come to understand, let me tell you something. If right now, right this very minute, if one of you stood up or raised your hand and said, God did something wonderful in my life this week, I would be so happy to take whatever message I have and not deliver it and let you have a word, because I know that it would be more powerful and more effective. It would matter more than a sermon that I have prepared. That's kind of one of I told you, kind of the unrealistic, idealistic world that our mind lives in. I would tell you that when I've seen the power of God, I've very seldom seen it associated with what I call great preaching. Now, you might disagree with me. I think there's all in the world of room for you to disagree with me. But I never felt that Billy Graham was a great preacher. I never heard a sermon of his. Every time I heard one of his sermons, I'd say, oh man, ain't nothing to it. He's like got 2 or 3 points, and sometimes he just had 1 point. His sermons were just so simple, and they were just so brief. And they were always about getting saved. I mean, always about becoming a Christian. Probably no one in Christian history has ever been used more by Billy Graham to meet Jesus. And let me tell you what. I've known people throughout my ministry who've told me with their mouth that they made up their mind when they heard that Billy Graham was coming to town. Do you know what they planned to do when Billy Graham got to town? Yeah, I'm going to go to that, and I'm going to give my life to Christ. I'm going to get saved at the Billy Graham crusade. They'd already made up their mind as soon as they start singing Just As I Am. Billy Graham never had to get up and twist their arm. They'd start coming down out of the balconies and coming down off the floor and everything. Just as soon as Billy Graham said, come on. Power of God. And I would say that Billy Graham is probably one of my favorite people. But if I ever just wanted to listen to preaching, and I often do, I do often, I never put on a sermon of Billy Graham. You can still hear him and see him all the time. He's on cable television. I never stop and listen to him. Same thing about Charles Stanley. I never listen to Charles Stanley teach. And there's no question that God's using their life in ministry. But is it great preaching or great teaching of the Word of God? There is the power of God. And we have to say, God doesn't save people because of great men or women. God saves people because God is great. Anybody who would preach to midnight has way too high an opinion of the value of his words. But that's part of God. That's all right. And the people were very kind. They were very gracious. There were many lights in the upper chamber where they were gathered together. Now we'll make an observation about this whole story here in just a minute. But look at verse 8 again. There were many lights in the upper chamber where they were gathered together. That means it wasn't dark. It was real well lit. But why did he say that? Why did he say that?
Well, I guess it connects with the midnight.
That means,
Dark.
that means if you were there and you looked up to the ceiling, what would you see?
Stars.
They're in a house.
They're in a house.
What would you see? Smoke. How did they light? Did they turn on the switch? Was it LED lighting?
Candles.
It was oil. It was oil. And the whole, if you looked up there, you'd see black smoke. What he said, what's he explaining to you? Now, Eutychus is about to fall asleep. He's sitting over the window. He's about to fall out. He's about to pass out. Now, that's what that verse is there for, not to let you know that there was a lot of light. It was letting you know there were a lot of fumes in that place. All right? And they're sat in the window. Why was he sitting in the window? So he could breathe. So he could breathe.
Yeah, thank you.
A young man named Eutychus being fallen into a deep sleep. And as Paul was long preaching, I would put a lot more O's in there, he sunk down with sleep and fell from the third loft and was taken up dead. All right, now you're supposed to go, as you're reading the Word of God, you need to do this. A part of preaching is not just listening to what I say, or even see what the Scriptures say. Let God speak to your heart. Was Eutychus the only one who was asleep? What do you think? Doesn't say, does it? He was the only one in the window sleeping. There's a lot of them that already fell over or slumped down. Don't you think so that if somebody, even if he was the great Paul the Apostle, that some of them went to sleep? Because the truth of the matter is that there are many great and wonderful things that we can say or teach or preach about our faith, but sometimes we just get tired. We get weary. And sometimes, even if it was a great, great, great preacher like Paul, a great Christian like Paul, we might still go to sleep. It's one of the heartbreaking things of the story about the night of Jesus' arrest. Do you know that every time Jesus came back out of the heart of the garden and came out to check with his disciples, do you know what they were doing?
Sleeping.
They were asleep. He says, couldn't you watch with me 1 hour? Couldn't you watch with me 1 hour? Sleep. But he understood. Do you know what he said? The spirit is willing. The flesh is weak. We get tired. We get tired. Sometimes at my work, my other work, I'll sit at my desk and I'll connect with people over the telephone or connect with them through the computer. But then, like last week, a lot of times, people out on the plant floor need my help and they need some assistance. And when I'm at my desk, I'm sitting down in a padded chair and I've got a carpet just like this underneath my feet and a pad underneath my chair. You know what the plant floor is made out of?
Concrete.
It is. It's concrete. So about 90% of the time when I come home on Friday night, I had to act a little perky Friday night because we had company. I had to act a little. I'm usually, just ask the other Baines, they're pretty grouchy and foul and tired. I acted normal Friday night. But I was tired. Usually about 90% of the time when I come home on a Friday night, we go out and we'll have supper. Please join us sometime. We'll try to get the word out about where we're going to convene at. None of us feel like cooking or preparing or anything like that. And I guess it's a little expensive, but we feel like emotionally we need it. It often does just exactly what we need it to do. But let me hit this line one more time. About 90% of the time, I use Saturday to recover, to keep from dying, you know. I inherited my daddy's DNA, and Daddy pretty much rested himself to death, and so on Saturday, I believe totally in the Sabbath. I try to do everything I can to rest.
That's why you were down on the...
Yes. I was down on my knees even before I got down on my knees, I believe. So, listen, we can have church work day anytime you want to, and I can do it. I can do it till I die. But yesterday when I got in, I hurt pretty much all over. I mean, hurt. I couldn't hardly even think or see straight. And so I started to bottom my feet. I don't have fallen arches. My arches, I never had arches. I was born flat feet. One of the sweetest memories I have of my mother is that when I was growing, my legs were growing. The doctor called it growing pains. That means he didn't know what it was and didn't know what to do. For hours, my mother would hold my legs in her lap and rub my legs. And I just have tears run down my face. I'd be crying. I'd be hurting so bad. And I got too old a long time ago even to go over to mothers and say, would you rub my legs? Because I guarantee you, if I ever went over and asked my mother to rub my legs, she'd do it. Now for Daddy, there was only one person who could rub his legs. He had a lot of leg pain when he was gone. There was only one person that could. Terry tried to do it, but she just didn't do it right for nothing. He liked for Joe to do it. Joe. Where's Joe? I'll tell you that story sometime. And I stopped at Kroger's, and I was hoping I wouldn't see anybody I knew there. The Lord answered that prayer. I was just hurting so bad, I knew I just couldn't even hardly talk. I went in and got me grabbed one of them rotisserie chickens. It was probably 3 days old. They keep out there in that hot thing in front by the cash register. And I took it home and ate just about enough of it so I could take me a whole truckload full of Motrin and aspirin. And Terry offered me a pain pill, and I turned that down. I asked her if we had any opioids, and she said no. I said I thought everybody did. And anyway, I took, and I went to bed. I went to bed. So, the spirit is often willing, but I'm finding that the flesh gets weak. At our deacons, man, I want to give something away. Henry apologized for not being able to do as much since he'd been sick. And I couldn't do half what he did yesterday. Linda's not ever getting old. She'll probably never die. She just keeps on, just like the Energizer buddy. The spirit's willing, but the flesh is weak. And so, boy, I was done in last night. You can only stand so much. You can, you get tired, physically tired, get weary. You get hurt. I come in on Randy every once in a while. He's on that stupid bicycle, don't ever go nowhere. He keeps thinking he'll wind up in Priceville, but every time he quits, he's still in his trailer. And he's got to do that. He's got to do it. If he don't do that, have you ever thought, I'm not going to do this because it hurts?
No.
You can't do that, kid. Well, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to ride my bicycle. That's what my daddy would do if it hurt. He wasn't going to do it. I ain't going to do that. So if Randy's idea was riding my bicycle hurts, so I'm not going to do it today. I'll do it tomorrow. He never would ride a bicycle. Eutychus just got tired. Nobody ought to preach to midnight, Billy Graham or anybody else. Now that last phrase, taken up dead. Pretty much, I know what that means in Southern talk. He's taken up dead. It means he was dead. He was dead, doornail dead. He was dead. A lot of people look at this next verse now. Paul went down, fell on him, and embracing him, You know what they were saying when he's embracing him? You know what he's doing? CPR. You're doing CPR, embracing him. Elijah did that. I kind of want to go back to those guys and say, oh, just raise him from the dead. If you do a lot of embracing and everything, put your mouth on theirs. That's what Elijah did. It sounded like he's giving him CPR. So they'll just say, well, he wasn't taken up dead evidently means like he was left for dead. If you say he was left for dead, is he dead? No, he ain't dead. He's left for dead. We're pretty sure he's dead. He might die. He's probably going to die. He's probably dead. Taken up dead. I wasn't dead. He just went down there and squeezed him a few times. And he says, trouble not yourselves, for his life is in him. He didn't say, I raised him from the dead. He didn't say he was dead and now he's alive. He didn't say, Eutychus, come forth. And so they said, well, this guy, he was knocked the breath out of him. Paul went down there and embraced him a few times. But this is not a genuine miracle. Well, I know what taking up dead means. He was dead. He fell out of the third-story window. He wasn't dead? Well, I believe this is a genuine miracle right here. And it says, wherefore he came up again and broken bread. Now, what does that mean now? Here, have the Lord's Supper. No, they still, that means take some nerve. Here, eat some. Have a bite to eat. If he's taken up dead, you still kind of look a little funny.
Being dead makes you hungry.
That does. And, so they broke bread. And someone says, we need to get him to break some bread. He says, we need to get him to eat the Lord's Supper. He says, no, we're talking about the old way you used to talk about it. Broken bread and eating. He talked for a long while. As if they hadn't already heard somebody talk for a long while. Even till break of day. And I wonder what he said. What did he talk about? Did he see something? Did something happen to him? Was he just glad to be alive? And was he apologizing for falling asleep in the sermon? So he departed. Paul departed. They brought the young man alive and were not a little comforted. I like the way Luke phrased it. They were not a little comforted. They were a whole lot comforted. Now, this is a funny story. Unless you're Eutychus' mom and dad, or his brother and sister. Some things we look at, we don't look at them just right. This is a funny story about a man who went to sleep during the sermon, the Sunday sermon, fell out, broke his neck, and was raised from the dead, and they all had a good time, and it all is happily ever after. We got a call last night, and boy, I almost always hate the phone to ring, especially at certain times of the day. Can you still hear that time when your daughter or your son calls you? I can still hear it. I can hear it just like it's going on in my ear right now. Daddy, I've been wrecked. I've called my daddy a few times like that. Daddy, tore up the car. I've been wrecked. There have been a lot of times when I thought my daddy, I wondered if my daddy had any idea about what being a daddy meant. But there were several times when I had to call Daddy. My dad's a car dealer. And my daddy gave me cars. He gave me cars. Even, my son is driving a car right now that was indirectly bought. The one just before that he tore up, my daddy bought it for him, financed it for him, helped him get it, signed for it, everything. So cars are important to Daddy. You know what I thought? Daddy would be mad if I tell him I tore up the car he gave me. Every time. Do you know what first thing my daddy said was?
Are you okay?
Are you all right? Yeah, Daddy, but the car. What about the car? Where you at? I'll come get you. You all right? Yeah. I'm all right. Is anybody else hurt? Anybody else? No. Nobody else is hurt. I never forget that. Our phone rang last night. Addison had fallen, and she was here this morning, but she was standing at a desk, in a desk chair with rollers on the bottom of it, and it just flipped right out from underneath it. And she hit that desk, the edge of that desk, with her upper teeth, with her mouth. She just hit it, just like that. She said it sounded like a rock being hit by a hammer. And she broke off some of her teeth here and drove one of them all the way up into her gum. And Brian and Carice were there, and Avery was there. And I said, just blood was everywhere. It's just an awful thing. And they called us. I worried all night long last night. I was so glad. I don't know. She got up this morning and just insisted on coming to church. She didn't feel good, and she didn't feel like being here this morning, but she wanted to be here. And she loves y'all. She loves y'all. Let me tell you something. She doesn't really, I mean, she's 7 years old. She doesn't really know who Jesus is. I like to hear Aiden learning about Jesus. Who's he praying to? Who's he praying to? Well, that's a good question right there.
Exactly.
There have been people for thousands of years saying, who was he praying to? All right, huh? That's a great question. Addison doesn't really understand a lot of things or even know much of anything about Jesus and God. But she loves y'all. She loves y'all. I want to thank you. She gets to see us all the time. She don't come to this church because seeing what Danny and Liz, Pops and me, they see us all the time. Mama would say, kid's going to be grown before I get to see him again. Yeah, I know. It's hard. We didn't take the kids over there every day. I didn't ride Carice. I wanted to, so I take the kids by to see Mama. It's hard. And they got 1,000 things going on. Got 1,000 things going on. So it's tough. This is really not a funny story. It's a terrible story that turned out okay. Addison's going to start tomorrow. She's going to have oral surgery. And she made me look at it today, and Terry wanted to show me a picture. I said, I want to see a picture of that. And we were trying to decide if we should go over there. They're going to take it to the emergency room. You know, that's the thing. I'll have to cut this out of the video. But I kind of wish sometimes that my son-in-law and my daughter were not nurses, because when my kids got sick, they'd take them to the doctor. Or to the emergency room. I'd say. So they just doctor on their kids. And I try to be quiet. It's okay. But boy, I'm sure y'all pray Carter all the way to Auburn. You make him call you when he gets there? Send you a text or something? He probably forgets every once in a while, don't he? Does he not? Okay, there you go. I forget all the time. I'm supposed to do that too. I'm here. I got in. I really ought to send, about 9 o'clock tonight, I'm going to be pulling into my driveway. I've been wishing that I could tell y'all, I know y'all been home eating popcorn and eating cornbread and milk for about 2 hours, but I'm just now getting home. I just want you to feel a little sorry for me. But I don't want to do that. That'd be awful to do something like that. This was somebody's kid. He fell asleep during church and was taken up dead. Well, this is a... Let me close by telling you this. Now, you and I don't ever have to be convinced that the Bible is the Word of God. And so sometimes when I'm carrying on like this proves that the Bible is reliable or proves that the Bible is the Word of God, we say, well, we don't ever wonder about that or worry about that. But there are lots of people, you need to be able to converse with people who have those kind of doubts or those kind of unbeliefs. Why is this story here? Why tell this story? There's only one reason. Does this tell about great preaching or what he preached on? Is there some theological truth? Is there some moral to the story about not sleeping in church? There's only one reason why this story is in the Bible. Do you know why? Because it happened. It happened. This is something that happened. Luke is not making something up to progress a theme or an idea or an agenda, Luke is saying, this happened. And then he says, next, this happened. And then that happened. And we're saying, this don't really fit. This doesn't teach anything. You can't look at the story of Eutychus and say, you know, there's some great truths there. Now, I pulled out what I thought about the Lord's Day and it being Sunday, and I'm straining and just trying to pull stuff up. But I want to tell you that the only importance of the story, the only reason it's there is because Luke is telling us he's not writing a story. He's reporting what happened. And the Bible is filled with these kind of things. Kind of like, well, what in the world is that doing there? What does that mean? Why does that say that? That seems to be, it's the kind of thing that a newspaper editor or a book editor would look at and say, they don't add anything to the suspense or to the story. That doesn't drive the plot. But Luke would say, well, I'm just telling you that the night before we left, this happened. And all I'm doing is just telling you stuff that happened. So it has all of the marks of someone reporting information of things that he saw. And he's not saying once upon a time or in a galaxy long, long ago and far, far away. It's not a fairy tale. The story of Eutychus has no value at all except to his mom and daddy who are just so glad that he's alive. Eutychus never wrote anything. We don't never hear from him again. We don't know who his children were or who he married. He's not important. We'll probably see him in heaven and find out what happened to him after that. But this story doesn't matter except for the fact that Luke says God did an amazing thing through Paul. He raised somebody from the dead. But that was just the kind of thing that happened all the time. And somebody might say, well, Luke, what did it have to do with whether Paul would go to Rome or Jerusalem? He said it didn't have nothing to do with any of that or the worldwide Great Commission. He just said, we were there that night before we set sail the next morning, and this is what happened. And I'm just telling you. He said, I'm not spinning a tale. He said, I'm telling you, this is what happened. And if I'm going to be faithful recorder and chronicler of this history, then if you read, I'll tell you, let's close by looking at Luke chapter 1. First, I'm going to hit these and we're done. Thank you for your patience. It's almost midnight. I got to quit. It's going to look like you're about ready to fall out. Luke says in verse 1, for as much as many have taken in hand to set forth in order a declaration of those things which are most securely believed among us, even so, as they delivered them unto us, which from the beginning were eyewitnesses and ministers of the word, it seemed good to me also, having had perfect understanding of all the things from the very first, to write unto thee in order, most excellent Theophilus. He says, a lot of people have been writing this stuff down, but he says, it felt like it's really important for me to tell you what happened in order. Do it in order. Just do it in order. So there's a lot of things you say, well, that don't seem to be important. Well, it is. It happened. I'm so glad with all that's going on in my life that something important doesn't happen every day. Something important in my life happened yesterday, and I'm still not over it yet. You pray for our baby. Pray for us. And I love them too. I love them too much, probably. You have grandkids too. I don't understand why you love them, but I know why I love mine. Mine are good looking and smart. But y'all's just, I don't know, that's not true, is it? God's given us some wonderful people to love, and you're a part of who they love. And that's, they think of you. They want to let you know what happened. And you pray for her. Pray for them. And pray that, thank the Lord that they're finally taking them to the doctor instead of just Dr. Norman. They're probably really good doctors. Carice and Brian. One of these Sunday mornings I'm going to be up here and I'm just going to drop dead or fall down in the pulpit, and I'll look up and there'll be Brian standing over me.
Embracing you.
Yeah, embracing me. say, oh no. No, it just jumped in my brain. I've been thinking of my other Uncle JP a lot lately. Why? I do know why. Going through Mama's old pictures. He had a bad heart. He collapsed at home in Pontiac years ago, many years ago. And my Aunt Carrie was the only one there. He was laying on the floor. She was there with him, and she was trying to give him CPR, breathing into his face, pumping on his chest. She said, I preached his funeral. She said, he looked up into my face. He didn't say anything. He just went, that's enough. That's enough. Well, you go out there and get it this week. Pray for me that maybe I'll have some sit-down work to do this week. You know what I'm doing next Saturday? I got a wedding. I got a wedding. I got to be the preacher at the wedding. It's a big wedding too. It's a wedding where there's going to be a lot of people in it, but none of them want to say anything.
That's right.
So what am I going to do?
Not even the bride.
The bride, they just want to go,
Yep.
or give me one of these. They don't even want to say I do. And so there's got to be a service, and everybody's going to be looking at the preacher like. But I'm hoping that everybody looks so pretty. My wife's trying her best to find me a coat that'll kind of make me look like I'm a preacher. And I think she's going to have to go to the local tent factory to see if they maybe got one that doesn't have tent peg holes in it, and I might be able to fit me. She's brought me 2 or 3. I've lost track. The bad thing about that is I have to take a shower every time before I can try it on, which is a real drag. My once every 2 or 3 months shower is really off track. I hope you have a good week. Please call me if I can ever do it some good, but I hope the Lord can help you more than I can. I really do believe He can. But if you think He wants to use me to do it, you call me. Thank you for all that you have done and that you do. Appreciate you. And God bless you. All right? Let me pray for you before we go. Father, thank you. Bless everyone here. We pray it in your name. Amen. Thank you, Andy.